The sun rose over Earth as it always had, casting a warm golden light across cities and forests. People went about their daily lives, unaware that something sinister was watching them from afar. In the vastness of space, a hidden threat was making its way toward Earth, and humanity had no idea what was coming. For years, deep in the shadows of the galaxy, an alien race known as the Conquerors had been observing Earth. They had studied the planet, learned its secrets, and patiently waited for the right moment to strike. Their ships, sleek and deadly, hovered near the edge of the solar system, cloaked in darkness. No one on Earth knew they were there, not even the most advanced space agencies. The Conquerors were not a typical alien race. They were ruthless, cunning, and had a single goal: the destruction of humanity. They saw Earth as a weak, primitive world, and believed that it was time to erase it from the universe. But they had learned from their past mistakes. This time, they would not rush. They would strike with precision, using their superior technology to wipe out humanity before it even had a chance to fight back. As Earth's nations went about their daily routines, strange things began to happen. At first it was small, an unexplained power surge here, a mysterious satellite malfunction there. It seemed like nothing more than random accidents, and most people dismissed it. But in the shadows, the Conquerors were testing their weapons, preparing for the final assault. They knew that their moment was coming, and it would be swift. Then, without warning, the sky changed. Across the world, thousands of people looked up to see something they couldn't understand. Massive, dark shapes began to appear in the sky, moving in perfect formation. They were like nothing ever seen before: enormous ships, sleek and black, that seemed to block out the sun itself. Some people thought they were just strange clouds, others feared they were military aircraft from a foreign power. But no one could imagine the truth. It started in the cities. A bright flash in the sky, followed by a deafening boom. Buildings crumbled as explosions ripped through the streets. The Conquerors had arrived. Their ships unleashed a terrifying force, raining down destruction on Earth's major cities. There was no warning, no time to prepare. The people of Earth were helpless against the advanced technology of their attackers. Governments around the world scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Communications were cut off. The power went out. People ran for their lives, but there was nowhere to hide. The Conquerors moved swiftly, striking without mercy, and humanity was caught off guard. In the chaos, something remarkable happened. As the bombs fell and the world burned, a single message crackled over the airwaves, reaching every corner of the planet. It was short, simple, and chilling. The time for retaliation has come. This message was broadcast by a secret organization known as the United Defense Front. For years, they had prepared in the shadows, studying alien technology, building weapons, and waiting for the day they would have to fight. They knew that humanity had to fight back, or all would be lost. The world was in shock. The first wave of destruction had left cities in ruins, but the message gave people a glimmer of hope. There was still a chance to fight. The United Defense Front had been working on a secret project for years, an advanced fleet of ships, capable of taking on the Conquerors. It was time to reveal them, and to strike back. But before humanity could retaliate, the real question remained: could Earth's defenders survive long enough to prepare for the ultimate war that was about to unfold? The Conquerors were not just an alien race, they were a deadly force that had no intention of losing. The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of a few brave souls who would rise up to face this unseen threat. The battle had only just begun. As the dust settled from the first wave of destruction, the world was plunged into chaos. Governments collapsed under the weight of the attack, and the people of Earth were left in a state of panic and confusion. Cities lay in ruins, and the once bustling streets were now eerily quiet, save for the occasional rumble of distant explosions. But amid the devastation, a new hope was emerging. The United Defense Front, a secret organization that had been preparing for this day, activated its hidden network. Across the globe, underground bunkers came to life. Soldiers, scientists, and engineers who had been working in silence for years now rallied together, knowing that this was their moment. They had spent decades studying alien technology, reverse engineering what little they had learned from past encounters. Now, those years of hard work were about to pay off. In a secure facility, deep within a mountain range, a group of engineers stood before a massive hangar door. Inside was humanity's greatest hope, the fleet of ships that had been designed to strike back against the Conquerors. These were not ordinary warships. They were sleek, deadly, and armed with the most advanced weaponry Earth had ever seen. The ships had been built with a combination of human ingenuity and salvaged alien tech, making them the perfect weapon to face the invaders. As the hangar door slowly opened, The sight of the ships took everyone's breath away. They were unlike anything anyone had ever seen, sleek, dark, and equipped with weaponry that glowed with a menacing energy. These ships had been built for speed, agility, and sheer destruction. They were powered by a unique energy source, one that had been harvested from the wreckage of the conqueror's ships. It was a weapon of war, forged in the fires of desperation. The fleet commander, Captain Lila Carter, stood at the forefront, her eyes locked onto the ships. She had trained for this moment her entire life, and now it was time to lead the charge. She turned to her crew, who were just as determined as she was. They were the last line of defense, the only hope humanity had left. Their mission was clear: strike back against the conquerors with everything they had. But there was something else, something they had not anticipated. As the fleet prepared to launch, a strange signal was intercepted. It was faint, almost like a whisper, but it was unmistakably a message from the conquerors. The message was simple, yet chilling. You are not the first to resist us. You will not be the last. The message sent a shiver down Captain Carter's spine. It was clear now that the conquerors had been through this before. They had crushed countless civilizations before Earth, and they would not be easily stopped. The fight was not just about survival, it was about proving humanity's strength in the face of annihilation. The crew of the fleet knew that this was only the beginning. They had a long, brutal fight ahead of them. The conquerors were powerful, but humanity had something they didn't: a will to survive, a determination that could not be broken. And so, with their ships powered up and their weapons ready, they launched into the sky, heading straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. As they ascended into the atmosphere, the feeling of uncertainty and fear was replaced with a burning resolve. The world was counting on them, and they were ready to fight. The battle was not just for survival, it was for the future of the human race. In the distance, the enemy fleet loomed large, their dark ships waiting. The final confrontation was upon them. There would be no turning back. The hum of the fleet's engines resonated through the cockpit, a constant reminder that humanity's last hope was now racing toward a confrontation that could end their existence. Captain Lila Carter gripped the controls tightly, her eyes fixed on the swirling mass of enemy ships ahead. The vastness of space seemed endless, but her mission was clear: to face the conquerors head-on and strike where it hurt the most. As the fleet approached their target, her heart raced, not with fear, but with the cold determination of someone who knew this was the only chance they would get. For years, Earth had been unprepared, unaware of the power of the conquerors. But now, armed with the most advanced ships ever created, humanity would no longer be a passive bystander. The first battle had been a surprise to both sides, but now, the real war had begun. They had no illusions. The conquerors were ruthless, technologically superior, and relentless. But humanity had something they didn't: an unbreakable spirit. As the fleet entered enemy territory, it became clear how enormous the conquerors' forces were. Ships, hundreds of them, filled the black void of space. They were like shadows, vast and intimidating, each one exuding a silent, deadly presence. Lila's pulse quickened. Every instinct told her to turn back, but she knew she couldn't. The fate of billions was on the line. "Engage stealth mode," she ordered, her voice steady but laced with urgency. The ships of the United Defense Front shifted into their low-profile, cloaked configuration, becoming nearly invisible in the vastness of space. The idea was to slip past the outer defenses and strike the heart of the conqueror fleet before they could fully react. For what felt like an eternity, the fleet moved in silence, only the occasional flicker of light from their weapons breaking the stillness. Then, without warning, the enemy's sensors flared to life, detecting the ships. The silence shattered as the conquerors launched a volley of energy blasts, streaking toward the fleet in a wave of destruction. The moment the weapons fired, chaos erupted. "Deploy countermeasures," Lila barked as the fleet swiftly maneuvered to avoid the incoming fire. The air inside the cockpit was thick with tension. Each pilot knew what was at stake. There was no room for error. The enemy ships, although slower in their reactions, were powerful, and their weapons had the force to obliterate anything in their path. The first few blasts tore through space, missing the fleet by mere inches. "All ships, return fire. Concentrate on their forward defenses," Lila commanded, the weight of the battle now pressing down on her shoulders. The fleet responded instantly, unleashing a barrage of powerful plasma blasts from their cannons. The weapons connected with the enemy ships with brutal force, causing massive explosions to erupt in the void. For a moment, it seemed as though humanity had the upper hand. But the conquerors weren't done yet. Their flagship, a towering structure of metallic mass and darkness, unleashed a wave of energy that washed over the fleet. The blast shook the ships, rattling their systems, but the human fleet held steady. Lila knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger battle, one that would push them all to their limits. With each passing second, the fight grew fiercer. The conquerors responded with greater intensity, launching waves of fighters to engage the humans directly. The skies of space were filled with the deadly dance of dogfights, explosions lighting up the endless black. But the humans were not backing down. They fought with everything they had, their resolve burning brighter than the weapons they fired. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the outcome was uncertain. The conquerors were strong, but humanity was not willing to surrender. And in the midst of the chaos, Captain Leela Carter felt a spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could win this war. The sounds of the battle raged all around as Captain Leela Carter's hands shook slightly on the control panel. The air inside the cockpit felt thick, heavy with the tension of the moment. Despite the confidence they had felt in the early stages of the conflict, the truth was becoming undeniable. The conquerors were relentless, and their strength was unlike anything the fleet had ever faced. The sleek, shadowy warships of the enemy seemed to absorb every attack, only to return with greater fury. Lila could feel the weight of every decision pressing on her, but she refused to let it break her. She focused on the battle ahead, her sharp eyes darting from one screen to another. The fleet was holding, but just barely. The enemy had regrouped, and now the conquerors were adapting to human tactics with terrifying speed. This was no longer a simple skirmish, it was a war of survival, and humanity was fighting with everything they had. "Target their engines," Lila ordered, her voice cutting through the air like steel. "We need to cripple their ability to fight back." Her words were a battle cry, and the fleet responded immediately. The ships angled themselves toward the heart of the enemy formations, unleashing a barrage of energy that lit up the dark expanse of space. But even as they fired, the conquerors' ships deflected or absorbed the blows with shocking precision, their shields shimmering with unearthly power. Then, the unexpected happened. One of the human ships, the Sentinel, a heavily armored flagship, suddenly exploded in a flash of light. It was a devastating blow. The ship had been a key piece of humanity's strategy, and its destruction sent ripples of panic through the fleet. Lila's heart skipped a beat as she watched the fragments of the Sentinel scatter through space like confetti. She knew the loss would be felt deeply, but there was no time to mourn. The battle was far from over. "Keep fighting," she barked into her comm system, her voice steady despite the pain that gnawed at her insides. "We're not giving up now." Her words rang in the ears of the fleet as they pressed forward. The Sentinel's destruction fueling their anger and resolve. The conquerors might have killed one of their own, but they had not broken their spirit. And in the midst of the carnage, Lila found something she hadn't expected: hope. Hope that humanity wasn't just fighting for survival, but fighting to prove something greater, that they would not go down without a fight. Despite the conquerors' overwhelming firepower, the humans found a way to adapt. They worked in tandem, using their ship's agility to outmaneuver the enemy's larger, slower vessels. The human fleet's speed and precision, honed through years of training and desperate ingenuity, began to make a difference. Small victories in the form of downed enemy fighters and damaged warships began to stack up. The conquerors were feeling the pressure, and their arrogance was beginning to waver. Lila's eyes flickered to a display showing an approaching alien capital ship, massive and deadly, far larger than anything the humans had ever faced. It was the heart of the Conqueror fleet, their command ship, and if they could take it down, they might finally have a chance at victory. But the path to the capital ship was a treacherous one. A wall of enemy fighters formed around it, blocking any direct approach. This would be the most dangerous part of the mission, the part that would either break their spirits or make them legends. But Captain Leela Carter wasn't the type to shy away from danger. "Prepare for a direct assault," she ordered, her voice calm, but her eyes burning with determination. "We're going in." The fleet gathered itself, the final, desperate charge beginning. As they rocketed toward the enemy's command ship, the battlefield became a blur of lights and explosions. The human ships dove into the chaos, weaving between incoming fire, striking at the conquerors' defenses with everything they had. It was all or nothing. The enemy's power was immense, but so was their will to fight. Humanity was about to throw everything at the conquerors, hoping that it would be enough. And in that moment, amid the flashes of light and the deafening sounds of battle, the question remained: would they make it through this? Or would they fall like so many before them? The final assault had begun, and the outcome hung in the balance. The heart of the Conqueror fleet loomed ahead, a dark monolith in the vast expanse of space. Captain Leela Carter's mind raced as her ship surged forward, the hum of the engines vibrating through her body. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, but she focused on the mission. This was it. The final push. The fate of humanity rested on their ability to infiltrate the Conqueror's command ship. Everything hinged on this one desperate maneuver. All ships, stay sharp, Lila's voice rang out, calm but intense. We're getting in close. No room for mistakes. Her fingers danced across the controls as she guided her ship through the incoming fire. Enemy ships swarmed around her like a cloud of hornets, their weapons flashing with deadly intent. The humans were outnumbered, but their speed and precision had given them an edge. Now, in this final assault, it was not just about technology, it was about grit, determination, and the unyielding will to survive. The enemy, capital ship, enormous and imposing, dominated the battlefield. Its surface was an unbroken expanse of dark metal, dotted with energy ports and weapons turrets. It was a fortress, built to withstand the fiercest of assaults. But beneath the surface, Lila knew, there was something more, something vulnerable. We need to hit their power core, Lila muttered to herself, her eyes scanning the tactical readouts. That's where we'll get them. Her ship darted through a gap in the enemy defenses, barely avoiding a barrage of plasma fire. The Conqueror's Fury, the largest of the alien ships, loomed ahead. Its guns charged up, sending waves of destruction toward the human fleet. But Lila and her crew had one advantage the Conquerors didn't expect. They had prepared for this exact moment. With a deep breath, Lila gave the order, "Fire everything we've got." The sky lit up as energy blasts streaked from the fleet's ships, a blinding wall of fire and light. The alien ship shook, its shields flaring in resistance, but the humans' concentrated fire pierced through. The Conquerors fought back viciously, but for the first time, the tide was beginning to shift. Small, quick strikes from the human ships began to make a difference. A few critical hits here and there were slowly chipping away at the enemy's defenses. "Now's our chance," Lila shouted. With a sudden burst of speed, she directed her ship straight for the core of the enemy capital ship. The crew braced themselves for impact, but there was no turning back. This was the moment that would either define humanity or destroy it. As they neared the heart of the ship, the enemy launched a final, desperate wave of fighters in an attempt to stop them. The sky became a deadly maze of ships, each one trying to cut them off. But Lila's ship was nimble and swift, dancing between the oncoming enemies. Every second felt like a lifetime, but with each move, they got closer. The Conqueror's flagship released one last, powerful shot. A beam of pure energy aimed directly at Lila's ship. The impact rattled the vessel, shaking it violently. For a moment, everything went black. The control panel flickered, and the crew struggled to regain control. "We're still in this," Lila yelled, gritting her teeth. With one final push, she steered the ship toward the power core, her fingers pressing down on the activation switch. The world seemed to hold its breath as the ship's engines roared one last time. The force of the attack was immense. A massive explosion erupted from the heart of the Conqueror's flagship, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The alien ship's defenses crumpled, and its massive hull began to crack and split apart. For the first time since the war began, the Conqueror's arrogance faltered. But even as the command ship broke apart, Lila knew that this was far from over. The Conquerors were a race of survivors, and they would not give up so easily. As the pieces of their flagship scattered through the void, humanity had won a battle, but the war was far from finished. With the remnants of the fleet still reeling from the chaos of the battle, Lila's heart pounded in her chest. There was no time for rest. The enemy had been wounded, but the fight was only just beginning. The future of humanity still hung in the balance, and there were many more challenges to face. But for now, as the enemy flagship disintegrated into nothingness, humanity had proven one thing: they would not be exterminated. They had fought back and they had won. The silence that followed the explosion was deafening, as though the entire universe held its breath. The Conqueror's flagship, once a symbol of invincibility, now floated as nothing more than a shattered wreck, drifting aimlessly in the void of space. The human fleet, battered but still intact, hovered in the wake of the destruction. Captain Leela Carter's hands trembled on the controls, but her mind was sharp. The battle had been won at least. That's what it seemed, but the victory felt hollow. "Report," she ordered, her voice firm despite the exhaustion that gnawed at her. One by one, the ships of the fleet sent their status updates. Many were damaged, some heavily. The Sentinel's loss still echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of how fragile their chances had been. But they had survived. They had dealt a blow to the Conquerors, and yet, a creeping doubt lingered at the edges of her thoughts. The war was not over. This, Lila knew, was only a temporary respite. The Conquerors were not the type to surrender. They were a race forged in the fires of conquest, and even now, as their flagship lay in ruins, they would be recalculating, adapting, They would strike back, perhaps harder than before. The comms crackled to life, a voice breaking through the static. Captain Carter, this is command. We've intercepted a message. It's from the Conquerors. Leela's stomach dropped. She had hoped they wouldn't hear from the enemy again, not this soon, but there was no avoiding it now. Put it through, she said, her voice tight. The screen flickered, and a figure appeared, an alien, tall and imposing, with cold, calculating eyes. It was one of their leaders, a being whose name Leela had heard only in whispers. The figure's lips twisted into a cruel smile. You humans are more resilient than we thought, the alien said, its voice like ice scraping against metal. But your victory here will mean nothing. We have already prepared for the next phase of our invasion. You have only delayed your extinction. The time of your destruction is inevitable. The message cut off abruptly, and Leela's mind raced. Prepared for the next phase. The Conquerors were still coming. Despite their losses, they had more forces hidden away, more weapons that Earth wasn't ready for. This was not a defeat. This was a warning. Are we ready to strike again? Leela asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We've sustained too much damage, came the reply from the engineering officer. Repairs are underway, but it will take time. We're not at full strength yet. Leela's mind churned. They had won a battle, but they were not prepared for what was coming next. They had underestimated the Conquerors, and now, humanity's strength was being tested like never before. As the fleet began to regroup, the alien leader's words echoed in Leela's mind. Your extinction is inevitable. It was a chilling declaration, one that left no room for hope. The Conquerors believed their victory was inevitable, that Earth's people would be crushed under their relentless assault. But Leela wasn't so sure. The human race had survived impossible odds before. They had survived natural disasters, war, and famine. They had fought and won battles against overwhelming odds. And now, with the knowledge that the Conquerors were more dangerous than they had ever realized, they would fight again, not just for survival, but for the very future of their species. We may be battered, but we're not broken, Leela muttered to herself. She turned to her crew, determination flooding through her veins. We've got time. We'll use it to rebuild. And when we're ready, we'll strike back harder. This isn't over. As the human fleet regrouped, repairing what could be salvaged, Leela's thoughts turned to the next phase of the war. They needed to find a way to outsmart the Conquerors, to hit them where it hurt most. There had to be a way to stop them, to turn the tide in humanity's favor once and for all. But as the first rays of hope began to glimmer on the horizon, Leela knew that the battle was far from won. The Conquerors had underestimated humanity's will to survive once before, and now, they would make the same mistake again. The war had only just begun, and Earth's defenders were not about to give up. The hum of the fleet's engines felt like a steady pulse, a constant reminder that the fight was far from over. Captain Leela Carter sat in her command chair, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy spread before her. The Conquerors were regrouping, their remaining forces hidden somewhere in the deep reaches of space. They hadn't surrendered. They hadn't given up, and neither would humanity. It had been weeks since the final strike against the Conqueror's flagship, and while the fleet had slowly repaired itself, the scars of battle were still fresh. But one thing had changed. Humanity had found its resolve. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had transformed into something far greater. Now, it was a war for the future, not just for Earth, but for the survival of every human being scattered across the galaxy. The Conquerors might have thought they were the hunters, but humanity had learned how to hunt back. Commander, we're receiving a transmission, the communications officer said, breaking the silence. Leela's eyes narrowed. She didn't expect it to be a friendly message. The Conquerors had always been merciless, but they were smart. They wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Put it through, she replied, her voice cold. The screen flickered to life, revealing the alien leader once again, his eyes filled with an unsettling calm. His features were sharp, angular, almost inhuman. He studied the humans with a sense of superiority that Leela found maddening. You think you have won, Captain Carter? The alien spoke, its voice smooth and calculating. But you are merely delaying the inevitable. Your resistance, though impressive, will not change the outcome. Leela clenched her fists, her jaw tightening, the nerve of the creature to speak as if victory was still in its grasp. We've been through worse, she shot back, her voice unwavering, and we're still here. Your empire has been cracked, and we're going to finish what we started. The alien's smile deepened, a chilling expression that made Leela's stomach turn. We shall see, Captain. Your victory was a fluke. We have already set in motion the next phase. We will be ready. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a lingering sense of dread in its wake. But Leela didn't let the fear take root. The Conquerors might be prepared, but humanity had learned from its mistakes. They had more than just their ships now. They had experience, they had strategy, and most of all, they had each other. Status report on the fleet, Lila asked, turning to her officers. We're as ready as we can be, the tactical officer replied, his face grim. We've integrated the new tactics we've learned. Our next strike will be more coordinated, more focused, but we need to act fast. The conquerors are already regrouping, and their forces are growing. Lila nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. They had no choice but to strike at the heart of the Conqueror Empire before it was too late. The next battle would be the most crucial of all. The Conquerors had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, but now they would face the full force of human ingenuity. Prepare for the final assault, Lila ordered, her voice steady and strong. We've taken their best shot, and we're still standing. We will go after their most vital systems. It's time to end this. As the fleet set its course toward the enemy's heart, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that this was the final chapter of the war. The battle would either decide the fate of humanity or seal its destruction. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but there was no fear, only determination. The conquerors had made a critical mistake. They thought they could break humanity with brute force, but they had underestimated what humans were capable of when they fought for their lives, their homes, and their future. And now humanity was about to show them what true resistance looked like. As the fleet accelerated toward their target, Lila's heart beat in time with the rhythm of the engines. She had seen the horrors of war, but she had also seen humanity's incredible strength. They had made it this far, and no matter what, they wouldn't stop until they were victorious. The final showdown had begun, and Earth's defenders would fight until the very end.